It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. Either you go to my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just contact me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Now, if you like the show, be sure and check out our Patreon. You can go to Patreon, and all the shows you hear Monday to Friday on AM/FM radio, you can find on the Patreon. Plus, so if you miss a show, it'll be there. Plus, there's exclusive content we put on Patreon. And there's a lot of free stuff, too, a lot of free documents. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be putting up all of the Dominion lawsuit emails and texts and the complaints and the answers. I'm going to put everything up there in the free section on Patreon. Some of that stuff is really, really funny. Okay? And a lot of it you heard from me first, okay, but Sidney Powell. Our archives you can find for free at Spreaker.com. You go there Friday nights. I put up 3 hours of brand new content each Friday night. So if you sign up for free, you get an email notification whenever I put up new content. Plus, I play repeats every single day of the week. And there's a chat room, too. You can hang out with other listeners. Our guest today, I found him on Twitter. His Twitter account is The Curls Music, at The Curls Music. You can also find him on Instagram at The Curls _cool band. His name is Mick Sansler. He's a musician, and he's got an interesting story about how a little adventure online there caused him to come into contact with the FBI. Mr. Mick Sansler, are you there?
Yes, Ed. Thank you for having me today. This is very exciting for me.
No, thank you too, man. Thank you so much. Before we get into this whole story about your brush with the FBI, tell us about yourself.
Yeah.
Who is Mick Sansler?
Sure. So I'm Mick. I play in a band called The Curls. That's kind of my main thing I do in my life. I've been doing that project since 2014. It's kind of a psychedelic art rock type vibe, get compared to Talking Heads and bands like that in Ween quite a bit. But yeah, we've been a band since 2014. Do a lot of touring. We've put out 3 or 4 records now. Working on a new record now. It's going to come out this year. We're based in Chicago, but right now I am sequestered down here in Georgia. I moved down here to be closer to my parents, so I've been down here enjoying a rural life, which has been a big change of pace for me, but it's not too bad. Actually, speaking of Dominion, I actually just walked by a house today that had a big sign in their window that said "Dump Dominion." As well as the Trump 2024 signs.
Yeah, have you been reading those texts and emails?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's pretty good stuff. Now, if people want to check out The Curls, they can check you out in person May 26th in Dubuque, Iowa at the Fox Den Motel, and then May 27th at the Rock Island, Illinois at the Rostox. Is that what it was? Rostox?
Yeah. Those are the most. Those are going to be the next dates we play, and then after that, there's going to be about 16 more shows starting in June 1st. That starts in the Midwest and weaves through the Northeast.
So then, do you have a place where people can go and check out the schedule and all your appearances?
Yeah, we're going to announce that soon. If people go on Instagram, that's probably the best place to kind of keep checking in to see where and when we're going to be playing, and then we'll throw some stuff up on our link tree, which you can get through there. That's going to have tickets and all the info and all that stuff too. So
Mick Sansler, okay. Now you were on your Twitter handle. Is this what happened when you caught the attention of the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Yes. Let's begin from the start of how I became very familiar with a couple FBI agents. But, so I post on Twitter quite a bit, like I think everyone does now. And usually, it's a lot of jokes and satire. I like to do sort of a pseudo right-wing character sometimes, and I kind of tie that into the stuff we do with the band. But, so it's all started when the Roe v. Wade got reversed, and obviously a lot of people were posting about that, voicing their opinions, and I made a post I think it was the day of and the day after that happened. It was a post sort of saying that I support our government and I would never harm anyone, elected or not elected, if I saw them in public. So it was sort of like a winking post, and it did. And there was a picture of me holding a a gun and doing it, in a really funny fashion, not in a very serious way. But it kind of in context, I think if you followed my account, you know that it's a joke. But anyway, I didn't think much of it. I deleted it 2 days later because I just didn't think it was that funny. And I think it was however many months later, I went on tour with the band in June of 2022. And it was like a week into the tour, and I started getting a lot of calls from a number I didn't recognize, like at all hours of the day, the morning, middle of the day, at night, even at like 1 a.m., which was weird to me, but no one was leaving a voicemail. And then my wife, who was also in the band, was on tour with us, and she started getting calls. Same times, same type of numbers, but no voicemails. We didn't think much of it.
What was it, like a 202 number?
It was, I think it was a 202 number. It was two different numbers that it was coming from. But I think one of them was 202, and then one of them was a Chicago number. And I found out subsequently that it was from the field office in Chicago. There was an agent in the field office in Chicago that was
just a fan of your music?
My trail. Yeah, well, it does get to that point where my music does get discussed, and that was kind of exciting. But anyway, so this is happening for a few days, and I really didn't think anything of it. And this is also months after I made this dumb post. And the night that we're playing in Chicago at the end of this 3-week tour, the calls are happening again. We're going to go on stage in maybe 15 or 20 minutes. And my wife comes over to me and pulls me over and says, I think you need to listen to this. And I'm like, okay. And listening to this voicemail she shows me, and it's a guy, claiming to be an FBI agent in the Chicago office, and he's saying, and he left it on her phone, by the way, which I thought was odd. But he left a voicemail basically saying they are aware that we're playing a show in Chicago tonight. He wants to talk about a post I made or multiple posts I've made because they have determined that I could be a threat to public officials, and that if I don't call them and get in touch with them immediately, they're going to get the Chicago Police Department involved, and they will be sending people to the show tonight. And so it was like 10 minutes before we got on stage. Initially, I immediately thought it was a joke, a friend doing a joke because
Sure.
They know I'm paranoid about these things anyway. So we went up on stage, and there were two guys there in the audience that my drummer pointed out to me that looked completely out of place, as federal agent-y as you can look. Not fitting in at what is basically a punk rock dive bar. And so we find out later that these were two agents that they sent to the show just to kind of check out things. But anyway, I played the voicemail over the microphone during the show, and we're joking about it, having a good time. And then around 1 a.m., the guy called my wife's phone again. And this time I picked it up, and I ended up talking to this guy who I later find out is a federal agent. And this is when he starts to threaten me and say that if I don't meet with them in the next few days, that things are going to go further, and they're going to keep calling me and other people in my life. And at this point, I still think that this is a joke. So I just kind of blow it off and hang up. And then the next morning, I wake up at 9 a.m. to my dad calling me. And now
Wow.
I find out that they found my dad's number and are calling him and asking him questions about me. And then now I kind of determined that this is probably for real. I talked to another friend who's got a friend who's a civil rights attorney. His advice is that it's definitely real, and that they've been doing these sweeps on Twitter related to anything having to do with the Roe v. Wade ruling. And they're basically going through any post that could be determined as a threat, and they're targeting those people. And of course, all these people that they're targeting are anybody with left-wing politics.
Wait, so then, because your Twitter you only have like 500 followers on your personal Twitter. So,
well, that's the other funny part about it.
And you're followed by Jose Canseco.
Well, that's true, yeah.
How do you know Jose Canseco?
I really don't. I don't know how that happened.
Okay. Okay, but so now, wait, was it another Twitter guy who turned you in, or they were sweeping Twitter?
So I think it's one of two things. I mean, like, at first I thought, like, okay, somebody that I follow, reported this or something. I mean, that seems somewhat obvious because, like, the post itself, like, I'm not stupid. I can understand, like, why it wouldn't be taken lightly by some people if they don't have the context. But when I talked to my friend who knew this attorney, and he was kind of going through and telling me how they have all these people set up monitoring Twitter accounts, and they set up these, algorithmic triggers, basically. So, like, anything having to do with a certain topic matter, usually, obviously it's usually political or whatever, anything that has to do with a certain political matter that also mentions some form of violence or has any sort of firearms or weapons involved immediately gets flagged and sent to whoever covers that department. You know what I mean? So I'm assuming that's what happened, and then I kind of ended up finding out that's what happened, but it's still unclear to me. But I do end up meeting like an idiot with one of these agents the next day. Yeah,
that's not a good move. And I was telling you off the air too. I was telling you off there about how when I first got Twitter. And I only had like 80, people, following back and forth. But they were all like former guests from the shows, like Frank Collada, the gangster, and the Falcon and the Snowman. The bank robbery CIA guys. I was definitely had to attract some attention back in those days. But so when you went to meet with the FBI without an attorney?
Yeah, like I said, it was like a pretty foolish thing to do, and obviously I think like my conclusion, if anything I can say about all of this other than like I mean I find it funny at this point, but obviously like don't ever do that, anyone. I'm sure you probably talking about that on the show quite a bit, but yeah, I mean obviously I was told not to do that, but I think what I kind of was feeling, because I was about to travel back to Georgia, I was in Chicago, and this basically they're starting to harass a lot of people around me. And I was starting to think, like, in my mind, like, there's nothing here. There's nothing real here. I don't even own a gun. I'm not serious about it, overthrowing the government or harming anybody. It's clearly a joke. I'm starting to get a little paranoid about, like, well, they're going to get me fired from my job or something if they keep calling people, my day job and things like that. Like I said, like, not smart, and I wouldn't do it again. But I mean, the story itself is funny to me because eventually what I ended up doing is, like, I talked to my friend with the attorney, and they basically say, if you're going to go do it, don't talk about this, don't say anything about this, and if it gets to a place where it's uncomfortable, like, call me and I'll be there in 5 minutes. So that's kind of like part of what gave me some security about doing it. And then I also had my wife come and sit at a different table to watch what was happening.
Back up at the other table, like Damon Wilson when Roy Raiden went to go meet those hitmen.
Yeah, she's got the giant, oversized newspaper.
Oh my God!
In front of her. But yeah, that's the funny part. They kept calling, and eventually I'm like, all right, I'll meet you. They were at a McDonald's, so I ended up meeting a federal agent and then a guy from Chicago Police Department at a McDonald's to discuss, my discretions, I guess. And it was hilarious. I mean, it was, and that's part of another reason why I did it, is because I am stupid, and I was finding all of this really funny to a certain degree. And I thought, well, this would be funny to sort of waste their time with this and just, like, see what comes out of it. And I figured also, I'm always thinking, like, all right, well, this is going to make a great song. Yeah.
A lot of great songs are written in prison, yeah. So, trying to cash
and
it.
Also, a lot of great songs, are also fiction. Yeah. It doesn't actually have to happen. Yeah, so I meet these two guys, and, there's as much of a caricature of, the FBI and CPD as you could get, really. Two kind of, non-uniform guys come in, immediately know who they are. One of them really quickly goes to the bathroom, excuses himself. The other guy starts, trying to kid around with me and make me feel comfortable. Then the other guy comes back. Then the other guy goes to the bathroom. And then the guy sitting there with me now is the total opposite. I mean, it's really good cop, bad cop thing that they're doing immediately. And I just like was like laughing the whole time. It was really like, I think I told you when I DM'd you, it's like the whole thing I just felt like was like a, you know, like a throwaway chapter in like a Pynchon book or something, where it's like these federal agents are wasting this time on the most absurd thing in the world. But yeah, you know, they started asking me questions about my band. They were asking me how the shows have been, asking me about the club I was at last night and things like that. And then, you know, they start to switch over, and they not only pull up the posts that I mentioned, they end up pulling up a lot of different posts that I've made and asking me questions, including, like, I don't know if you remember when these, like, right-wing gun guys were posting pictures online of themselves, like, pointing their guns at their crotches. Do you remember that at all?
No, I don't remember that, no.
Okay. Some corner of Twitter, it was happening, and it was a lot of weird right-wing, kind of QAnon-leaning type people. I don't even know what it meant exactly, but I thought it was really funny. So, like, sometimes I would, like, pull up one of those pictures from Google or from Twitter, and I would post it from my account, you know, kind of emulating them and joking around, making fun of them. But so they're, like, showing me pictures of those posts, which are pictures I pulled from Google, and asking me, you know, where is this firearm currently, and things like that. And it's just, like, getting more and more ridiculous. And it just sort of, like, keeps going on. I feel like they kind of, like, started kind of giving up on that this is really worth their time. They start talking about how they want to eat ice cream, asking me about good restaurants in the area, things like that. And it kind of just ends up at the end them telling me that if I post anything like that again, you know, they're going to flag me, they're going to be watching, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question. Like, the actual post, though, wasn't an actual threat against Supreme Court justices or anything. What was the actual post?
No, so I told you it was the exact opposite, where as far as literal interpretation of wording, I said, you know, I support my government, and I would never harm, you know, an elected or non-elected official if I saw them in public or something like that.
Yeah, so that's a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, it's stupid, but I just think like the whole sort of like progression of all this and how long it took for whoever is in the FBI is handling, you know, idiots on Twitter to track me down and to sort of like be following me and our band while we were on this tour, because they were also pulling up posts and they were making sure they knew which city we were in each night. And it was like, well, yeah, we're a band. I post where we're going to be every night. There's no real clandestine operation happening.
But and then they actually said they cautioned you on what you could post in the future?
Right. I think that to me is like the one thing about this is like that confirms, I don't know, my worldview already, but essentially, like, it comes down to all of this that they went through to try to scare me and harass people in my family. It all comes down to them trying to tell me that what I can and can't say online. You know what I mean? So it's like that's kind of what I took out. That's the part of it that's like anybody that really pays attention to anything. I mean, I think like you can already kind of assume that that's kind of how this country operates, but I think it feels different when you get to physically confirm it and go through something like that, even as dumb as it is.
Yeah, it reminds me of the protests in Ferguson. And when, Al Sharpton made this big thing, we need to bring in the Department of Justice, the FBI. Yeah, sure.
Great.
FBI, he's FBI himself. And what do you call it? When they came down, supposedly to investigate the local police, they were going door to door and asking about the protesters. Were any of them threatening to overthrow the government? Do you know what I mean? Trying to dig up dirt on the protesters, Now, when this happened, you were on Tucker Carlson? Or is that Photoshop?
Sorry, no, that's Photoshop.
That's Photoshop. Okay.
I think if I reached out, I could probably manipulate my way onto a lot of those right-leaning shows with some of my experiences and the character I kind of do online. But No, that's Photoshop. So.
Well, as you talk, I'm actually making the Tucker Carlson face, okay? For the audience's reference.
Completely befuddled.
Oh, yeah. Like, well, what?
Nothing in the world makes sense.
Oh, boy. Have you been reading, though? Have you been reading the text, the Fox News test from the Dominion software?
I feel like I've skimmed some of that stuff the past few days. I know you've been talking about it. What is it said?
Well, the best one is you got to find the email that the Sidney Powell forwarded to Maria Monterromano. It's this long, crazy email with this woman. This is her source that the Dominion software was changing votes in different states. And she starts off by saying that I forget which the Supreme Court justice died at that hunting lodge, you know. So, I forget which one it is, but she was saying that he was murdered, okay, and he was murdered as a sacrifice at Bilderberg or one of those places, you know, Bohemian Grove, I think it was. And she goes on, and this is a real email that she forwarded. And at the end of the email, she goes, "And how do you think I know all this?" She goes, "I've been having these dreams all my life, and I was decapitated at one point, and I came back to life, and I can hear things in the wind." This is a literal, that's their source for the Dominion software.
Well, you never know.
Well, so Mick, let me ask you this, man. Have you had any kind of any further trouble with the FBI after this?
No, that's the thing. I did want to add at the end of all this, which is the funniest part to me, is one of them kind of stopped me before they. But by the way, when I was leaving, they did walk up to the counter at McDonald's and they got some ice cream for themselves. But before I left, one of them stopped me and handed me this card and said, for all your trouble today, and it was a free haircut coupon at Sports Clips, which for me, at this point, I felt like I was in a dream. Like I was losing my mind because I basically didn't sleep all night. We were out after the show for a long time and then immediately met up with them in the morning. So I have to add that, and I still have that card, although at first I had to analyze it because I was paranoid that there was some sort of chip in it, but it doesn't appear so.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you spend much time at the barber.
No, I haven't got a haircut yet.
Now, believe it or not, I'm in the process right now of making an appointment at Sports Clips either today or tomorrow. So if you want to send that over, I'll take a look at it. So you haven't had any... I
can send that express.
Yeah, there you go. Now, you haven't had any trouble with the FBI since, though, right? Any surveillance, any kind of suspicious activity, tapping on your phones or anything like that? Clicking
Nothing
noises?
that I've noticed, and I've flown a few times, and that was kind of like my first test. I was like, I wonder if something's going to happen, because they did, they were saying, I'm on this watch list now. So I find it hard to believe all of it. Not that I doubt that they have me flagged in some, office, but no, I haven't had any issues since. I haven't posted anything that's stupid since. So in a way, they almost won. But I haven't completely stopped talking about political things. But I'm not going to post guns anymore, I don't think, which, it's not that fun anyway.
Yeah, I know. We've been joking about this, but it's really not funny. We should be able to post on Twitter without worrying about the feds showing up, harassing you at work, following you around before they even make contact with you, Yeah,
when I was talking to this civil rights attorney, he was telling me about a client he had who... There was somebody posted, some right-wing lunatic he came across on Facebook had posted threatening that they were going to, attack this abortion clinic. And then in the comment section, this guy said something like, if you guys show up there, you're gonna find trouble or something. Like he was trying to stick up for this abortion clinic. And then a couple weeks later, federal agents showed up at his house and had some sort of warrant and raided this guy's house, searching for weapons and claiming that he had explosives and all these things. And none of that, of course, is true. But essentially, it's kind of the same thing. Obviously, that's way more excessive than what happened to me. But it's like this sort of tactic of trying to scare people into not, defending what they believe in or being able to criticize or say anything on a public forum. It is scary and it's wrong, but I mean, my situation, I find it funny, but I think you're right.
Yeah, and just think, did they show up at anybody's house before January 6th, like Stuart Rhodes or Enrique Tenario? Did they show up at their house?
Yeah.
Preemptively?
No, any of these, Proud Boy type people, whoever, all these. I mean, the most vile things I've ever read online is if you find some of these, more right-wing accounts or extremist people, I mean, the things they're saying are completely insane. And I don't think that they necessarily should be, locked up or surveilled or flagged in the same way necessarily, but it's funny how it's never those types of people that are being put in these situations. It's always anything that seems to be considered left wing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always tell the story back in Vegas when we were having all the George Floyd protests. They were actually targeting leadership and running them for warrants. They'd follow them back to their car, run the plate and see if they got any warrants and stuff like that, and then pick them up later on, okay? And there was a lot of that going on. The Vegas was tough with any kind of activism. So,
yeah, I was thinking it might be a little strange there.
Yeah. It's okay. You're staying out of trouble now, right?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to. I was thinking about, do you remember the NATO summit in Chicago? I think it was in 2011, when they locked up those kids that they claimed were planning to, I think, set off a bomb or something like that. And I think they're, I don't know, it was the NATO 7 or one of those types of names. But yeah, I remember that being the same thing. And I knew guys that were friends with all of them, and I'd gone to high school with some of them. And I was working at the AV club at the time as a journalist, and I remember I convinced them to let me cover the whole NATO summit thing, so that was interesting. And I was working, I was trying to talk to people about that, and all of them were claiming, these things where they had been following them around for weeks, and they had infiltrated the group with a few people that were hanging out at this house, and planting these ideas and things like that. And I think that stuff happens all the time.
Oh yeah, I just got a new interview with Trevor Aronson from the Intercept. And he's got a podcast called, I think it's called The Alphabet Boys. And I've been interviewing him for the last 10 years, man. And his specialty is how the FBI infiltrates these groups and instigates. And sometimes even the only one who can get a hold of the weapons or the explosives is the FBI undercover agent or informant.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So we just had him on about that case up there at Whitmer in is it Michigan?
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
That was the Proud Boy guy that infiltrated them and basically instigated the whole thing, right?
Well, yeah, but you remember how they had to go down, they had to put all their cell phones in a box and then go into the basement of a vacuum cleaner repair store where this guy lived, okay? Then they had to go climb through a hole to get down to the bottom, and they still had everything recorded. And then they had every word transcribed on their car trips. They had every word transcribed of these guys, these geniuses out there trying to blow up a bridge.
Yeah. So fun.
Well, okay, so is there anything else that you want to tell us about your adventure here with the FBI, Mr. Mick Sansler?
I don't think there is much else to say. Like I said, I think if anything can be taken from this is sort of the point you raised, which is just I think that I think people just need to be more aware of what's going on as far as people being oppressed and censorship and things like that, and that it's even things as trivial as this are trying to be mitigated and controlled by these federal agencies. So it's just, I don't know, it's just something I think it's a good thing to ruminate on and kind of think about what kind of country we actually live in. But I don't think there's nothing else I don't think I have about that story. Like I said, I haven't had any issues since, and I'm hoping they continue that.
Okay, so if you want to risk your freedom, you can follow Mick on Twitter.
Yeah, if you want to be a real freedom fighter and be associated with one of the most dangerous indie rock bands in the world.
Yeah, The Curls Music on Twitter. And on Instagram.
Join the Curls Army.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. On Instagram, The Curls _ cool band. And you can check them out in person May 26th in Dubuque, Iowa at the Fox Den Motel. May 27th at Rock Island, Illinois at the Rostocks. Hey, Mick, man, stay out of trouble, okay? All right? And
All right, I'm going to do my best, Ed.
if you get picked up by the CIA, give me a call.
Okay, I got your number.
Okay, bro, good night.
All right, see you.